The King of Staten Island got it right. When I heard Judd Apatow and Pete Davidson were making a movie, I assumed it would be another well-meaning promotional vehicle full of raunchy jokes for a rising star. Which I'm definitely not against, but that's not what we got. The King of Staten Island is a beautiful and insightful semi-autobiographical film based on Pete Davidson's life. It follows Scott, an adult stoner and aspiring tattoo artist, who perpetually carries baggage from the death of his father when he was 7. His dad, a firefighter, died in the line of duty 17 years before the start of the movie. The story kicks off as Scott's mom begins dating for the first time since the loss of her husband. The love interest, Ray, is also a firefighter, and Scott is less than thrilled about it. This narrative felt incredibly different from other Apatow films. It was a lot more sincere, like it came from a more heartfelt place. Turns out it did. Davidson's dad was also a firefighter, and like Scott's father, he died when Pete was 7 years old being a first responder in 9/11. Actually, Pete Davidson's character in the movie was named after Pete Davidson's dad, Scott Davidson. According to Davidson, making The King of Staten Island was a cathartic experience that helped him work through some of his feelings surrounding his own father's passing.
It really allowed me to be as open and honest as I could be, and it helped me deal with a lot of my personal demons.
One of the themes explored in the movie related to his journey is,
you could overcome tragedy, through life experiences.
While I agree with and respect this concept, my main issue with it is that it sparks a paradox. He says you can overcome tragedy with life experience, but you can't have those experiences if you don't have the strength to face your tragedy. I think when Davidson stated that theme, he was oversimplifying it for the interview. More accurately, I think the film was exploring that paradox I just mentioned. That embracing your tragedy, while difficult at times, can lead to the healthiest outcomes, ultimately helping you overcome your tragedy. With the movie showing this view through Scott's relationship with Ray, the representation of Scott's pain surrounding his dad's death. Oh, a quick side note before we get into the rest of this video. This analysis is meant for people who have seen the movie. It's full of spoilers, but doesn't really hold your hand through the plot. So if you want to understand my arguments kind of more completely, I suggest you watch the film, then come back. Trust me, it's worth your time. Getting into the analysis, before Scott met Ray, Scott was depressive, apathetic, and lived in a daze. He constantly carried the hurt of losing his dad, but tried to numb himself from that reality with drugs and friends. Sure, he joked about his father's passing, but the jokes allowed him to hide his true feelings and brokenness. And when he showed any semblance of sadness, he had people around to comfort him, but not help him grow. They let him use them as sketchbooks to document his undirected emotions without challenging him in any meaningful way. Scott was jobless, didn't graduate high school, and had no prospects. His life was weighed down by distractions.
The New York way of dealing with things is just distractions. Yeah. And then you never deal with it.
The death of his dad left him with an inability to commit for fear that anything or anyone could be taken away in an instant. That's why he keeps making jokes like,
"Give your sister a kiss goodbye."
We don't do that.
Just do it. See? Wasn't that nice? Now, if she dies tomorrow, you'll remember that you kissed her goodbye. Have a good day at school.
You must really love me. I love you too.
I appreciate that, but I'm not ready.
You gonna say it back?
I'm not ready to say something like that.
You gotta say it back. What if I die tomorrow?
Then I'll be that guy saying, even though I never said it.
They reflect an obsession and hyper-awareness that everything is fleeting. On top of that, all the amazing memories Scott had with his dad and the stories his mom told him about what a great guy he was created this unrealistic image of his identity. One Scott would never be able to live up to, which made him feel more like a disappointment knowing he'll never be half the man his dad was. Scott often calls himself dumb and says he's not mentally well off enough to get his shit together.
All right, well, I'm fucking stupid, Claire, okay? Is that what you want me to say? I can't pay attention. I can't sit still, okay? I'm stupid. I'm a dumb idiot.
Oh, no, you have to prove that you're not stupid, and then you can work for the city.
Oh, so I can never work for the city. You just guilty because you're leaving? Now all of a sudden you're afraid I'm gonna die? I was gonna die anyway, whether you stay or not.
Are you gonna hurt yourself?
Yeah, I'm probably gonna hurt myself. I don't know how, but yeah. If anybody could do it, it's me.
But he's shown on many occasions that he is capable of reaching for more and wants to contribute. Despite how passive he seems, he actively chooses not to reach his potential. Possibly because he doesn't think he can be as good as this idealized version of his dad. Considering that rationale, some of the scenes where Scott appears to act counter to his character start to make sense. Like the first time Scott walks Ray's kids to school. Just before asking him to do it, his mom and Ray told him he needed to move out of her house and find his own place to live by summer. Scott freaked out and noted he wasn't capable of doing that because...
And where do you expect me to live? And with what money? You know I'm a fucking bum, right?
Yet even though he just received shocking and offensive news and no one was forcing him to, he took the kids to school. And when he got to school and the teacher told him to set up the paints for class, he could have just left, but again, he listened and set up the paints. Both these situations seem weird, but they were low commitment, low stakes ways for Scott to feel like he was contributing and being productive without fear of being let down. By initially protesting these requests, he got to look like he had his lazy armor up, but he contradicted it by doing what people asked him to do because it gave him a sense of purpose. Through the film, this idea of wanting to reach higher but being afraid to fail is something that pops up a lot with Scott. He essentially turned down an apprenticeship at the tattoo parlor and burnt the bridge that could have led to his dream.
Well, what if another guy walked in and he wanted to get a tattoo of his dead friend James on his chest, right? But you know James, and you don't want to give him the tattoo, because you know James and he's an asshole, and the world's better off without him. What do you do then?
You have a death wish?
And when his sister suggested he get his GED and go to college, he resisted it even though he showed interest. But walking the kids was something he can do and not choke up at. The fear of failing and not living up to his dad is why he was so pushy about his impractical tattoo restaurant goal. In conversation with his sister, you can tell Scott sees it as a joke. It's really a way for him to avoid expectation.
I'm gonna open that tattoo restaurant.
No, like for real.
I am being real. It's never been done before. It's the best idea ever. Ruby Tattoo's, where everyone's welcome.
If he's insistent about a dream that's so unfeasible no one expects it to work, he can't look like a failure or have anything taken away from him. His life is just one big boulder of nothing. He doesn't face his trauma and he doesn't change, but he also has minimal chance of being hurt again. That is until Ray came into his life. Scott was fine with his mom dating until he learned who she was seeing. Off the bat, Scott clearly laid out his reasons for why he was against the relationship.
The guy doesn't like me, and he has the same job as Dad,
Let's break down those reasons. First, earlier in the movie, Scott tattooed one of Ray's kids in the woods, so the first time they met, it was because Ray came to yell at him in his house. Ray wasn't irate for no reason.
He did the second worst thing you could do to a kid in the woods.
It was something so inexcusable and horrible that it was physically hard for me to watch the child tattoo scene. He didn't coddle Scott or passively dismiss him, but actively confronted his choices like he was playing the role of his dad. Second, Scott was against Ray because he was a firefighter. Scott's been open with his thoughts that,
if you're a fireman, just don't have kids or a family at all, okay? So that way you don't fucking crush them when you don't come home that one time. And it's wrong to tell a kid that you're gonna be there for him for his whole entire life. You miss graduation, your birthdays, okay? My prom dances. It's a very mean thing to do to children. And if you have a family, you're an asshole.
Take it easy. One way to look at it.
Yeah.
Tell that to my dad. Oh, but you can't, because he's dead.
Scott doesn't want his mother or his family to get too close to someone who might die unexpectedly at work, like what happened with his dad.
Do you not learn? Look what happened last time.
That, and he feels, given how similar Ray is to his father, that he'll replace him in their lives.
Why don't you just build another shrine to Ray while you're at it, right across from Dad, so they can be fucking pals?
Summed up, Ray forces Scott to confront the memory and pain of his dad, something he's been avoiding. He can't cover Ray up with a joke or make him go away. Ray's a constant reminder of Scott's baggage by the nature of his job, how he talks candidly with him, and how he tries to bond with him. But instead of being open, letting Ray in, and giving him a chance, he pushed him away to avoid acknowledging what he symbolized. In lieu of dealing with his emotions, Scott allowed his damage, misguided motivation, and anger to consume him while he attempted to remove Ray from the picture. This led to the loss of the support system Scott previously relied on to keep his life in stasis. His sister walked away from him when he suggested plotting ways of getting rid of Ray. Because Scott was trying to prove a point to Ray and his mom, he agreed to be the lookout for a pharmacy robbery his friends were waiting on him to do. They did the heist, his friends got arrested, and in turn, left him without his social group. Scott got in a physical fight with Ray, which subsequently resulted in his mom kicking him out of the house. And because he got kicked out and tried sleeping with the girl he was seeing for shelter as opposed to being open about his life and his feelings, The girl didn't let him stay because she didn't want to be used. When Scott finally had nowhere to go and no one to help him, he realized his last resort was Ray and the fire station. He couldn't distract himself from his reality. He had to recognize his trauma and the reminders of his dad. Once he accepted where he was and embraced his sadness, he lended himself the opportunity to interact with people who helped him find meaning and purpose. Scott learned about his dad and where he fit into the bigger picture. With these new experiences at the firehouse, he can put his pain and his father's death into a context outside himself and his thoughts. I think that's what
you could overcome tragedy, through life experiences.
Means. If you only have yourself as reference, everything you live through and all the trauma you have is filtered through your limited worldview. He got to meet people who contextualized his grief and thoughts surrounding his dad, who he felt didn't consider the hurt he could cause his family as a firefighter. His father was a hero who didn't think twice about helping others. And while the consequence of being a hero is sometimes suffering, heroes deserve love, to be happy, and to have families. Scott's dad, and therefore Scott, were contributing to something greater than themselves. That's why the next moment I'm about to show you, when a fireman approaches Scott about his dad's death, was so powerful.
I hear your stance, kid. You was a brave man. It's an honor to meet you.
Thanks, man. It's an honor to meet you, too. I didn't do anything, though.
You don't think you did?
No.
I appreciate your sacrifice.
Even though it was Scott's dad who gave his life, by being in his life and loving him, Scott sacrificed something too and gave part of himself for others. Scott's time in the fire hall helped him understand that and put his life and experiences in perspective. But he would have never had the opportunity to form that brotherhood if he hadn't actively faced his hurt and accepted it into his life through Ray. This is also represented in how Scott's opinion of Ray changes as Scott gains more information about his life. Originally, Scott doesn't like Ray because he yelled at him for giving his son a tattoo and because of his fireman hang-up. But that wasn't enough to turn his mother against him. So Scott goes to Ray's ex-wife.
You went to the person that hates me the most.
To collect dirt that fits his bias, Ray's a jerk perception, and convince his mom to leave him. Seeing Ray going into a burning building, giving his air mask to a person he saved from the fire, and getting to know him on a human level in Ray's own environment altered Scott's view on who Ray was. He wasn't a threat to his family or the way he lived, but rather he filled the role of a supportive figure who encouraged growth. These concepts are also visually communicated through the opening and closing shots of the film. Oh, by the way, this next point doesn't really add to my argument, but it enhances my analysis of Scott's journey. Recently, I've been getting into comparing the first and last images in movies because they usually represent theme in an interesting way. And King of Staten Island is the perfect example of how these two pivotal moments can demonstrate emotional arcs. So I want to talk about it briefly. The opening image of the movie is Scott's eyes in a rearview mirror as he's speeding past a forest. Looking at the central theme of how experience can help you overcome trauma by putting your pain in a broader context, this shot potentially symbolizes Scott's view of himself and his problems before the events of the movie, where he's the center of his universe and he can't look outside his own mindset. As he fixates on himself, life passes him by. But at the end of the movie, he's got a massive open eye on the back of his shirt as we see his whole body looking out into a vast cityscape. By that point, Scott has seemingly caught up with life, and he can see himself as a smaller part of a bigger picture. His life still isn't perfect. He still has baggage, he doesn't have a job or direction, and lives in the firehouse. But instead of only focusing inward, he has a new perspective on where he stands, and therefore more excitement and hope. Like I said in the beginning of this video, the King of Staten Island got it right. Not only was it entertaining, hilarious, and thoughtful, but it emphasized the importance of pushing yourself when evaluating your shortcomings. Because while life experience helps you overcome tragedy, you can't have those experiences if you don't force yourself to face your pain. And those are my thoughts on the King of Staten Island. At this point, I'd like to thank my patrons Matt, David, and Patrick. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you also want to support me, you can like this video, subscribe to my channel, and/or donate to my Patreon. The link is in the description below. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.